Hello everyone, my name is Tim and I'm doing a little video series on Advent. I am the admin assistant at St Francis College, which is located in Milton. And recently I had the pleasure of talking with Bishop Denise about Advent and what does it mean to her, what are her hopes for this season and for next year. And in the upcoming weeks, I'll be chatting with other members of the St Francis community to get their thoughts and reflections on these very questions as well, and trying to keep it in the theme of the week of Advent. But without further ado, let's hear what Denise has to say. And hello everyone, my name's Tim. I'm with Bishop Denise. She is a new member here at St Francis College, and hopefully this space will be decorated in the near future. We're going to have a chat about Advent and its meaning and a few other things in the middle there. So welcome, Denise.
Thank you, Tim. It's good to be here.
So I think we could start with, what does Advent mean to you?
To me personally, I think through my life, Advent has meant many different things. You know, as a child, I really didn't comprehend Advent terribly until I joined a church choir. And then I discovered that there were Advent carols as well as Christmas carols. And I suppose I started to get a greater awareness that this was a real time. It wasn't just about getting ready for Christmas. It actually had its own journey. So I think for me personally, that theme of journey has continued right through my life. Depending on what's happening in my life at the time, it might have had a different focus. And as I've grown in my faith and in my personal ministry journey, it's offered me a space in the busyness to say, no, it's not Christmas yet. There's a whole lot more coming, and I need to do some focusing on that.
Is that what you're talking about with the journey, or the focusing, or what is it you said mentioned about it being a journey? Can you explain that a bit more?
Well, the liturgical calendar helps us to journey through, so the church calendar helps us to journey through Advent. And our readings take us through a bit of history and into the story that ultimately leads to God's revelation of Christ in the world, which as a Christian for me is wonderful news. It's hope-filled. When I was a parish priest, I would take a parish through the journey. So the first Sunday, we might put the tree up, but there's nothing on the tree. The next Sunday, and it depended on the readings, we might put the Christmas lights on, just reminding us that there's a light on the path of the journey that we're travelling. Then we might put the decorations on, but explaining, what do the decorations mean? Why do we put a globe on the Christmas tree? Well, that's because Jesus came for the whole world. Keep going. And our Christmas decorations do have significance. It's just that with the glitz and glamour these days, they come in a plastic bag, you throw them on the tree and you make sure they're colour coordinated. But to be able to talk through the different meanings and add to that journey. And then usually Advent 4, as we approached one of the themes of Advent being love, that love of God for the world through Christ, how we can extend that. And that was often the Sunday when I encouraged parishioners and family to place a gift under the Christmas tree for someone else. So it might have been that we made up food hampers. It might have been that we made up family hampers, or we may have worked with another community organisation and said, this year we're catering for people who have experienced domestic violence or homelessness or whatever. These are the things we need, and we will pass them on to that organisation. So when we come together at Christmas, we have an understanding of what it means to receive a gift, what it means to be on a journey to get to that point.
So are you, in that way, are you taking them through the key themes theologically in each week, or not?
Yes and no. I think it's how you approach it, because Can I tell you a story?
Go on. Yeah, go.
Several years ago, mid-morning Sunday service, visitors to the service, grandparents with 2 grandchildren, quite young, 7 and 9, something like that, 2 little boys. And I remember I was sitting on the floor with the children, and we were talking about Mary and Joseph, and Little Donkey being the song. About Mary and Joseph and how Mary was having a baby, and they were on their way to Bethlehem, and must have been really uncomfortable, and they were a long way from home. And one of the little boys had this fascinating look on his face, and I thought, you're just not getting this. And I said to him, do you understand this story? Have you heard this story before? And he was absolutely polite, but he just looked at me and said, lady, I don't know what you're talking about.
Lady?
Yeah, lady, I don't know what you're talking about. And it was one of the turning points for me in how we tell the Jesus story, because he didn't get it, he didn't know. So unpacking the theology around Advent, for me, it's really important that I know who I'm speaking to. And quite often at this time of year, we attract people to church who may not normally attend. So we have to find a way to tell the story with integrity, not dumb it down, but preferably not have people sitting in the pews or the chairs or sitting on the floor going, don't know what you're talking about, lady.
What can I ask for? It may not have worked in that particular instant, but what did you do differently the year after, or did you? Or
I did a lot of preparation, and it wasn't just Advent. It was whenever I knew that I had something special where I was likely to attract visitors, or the church had something special. I thought very carefully about how I worded things, so the language was more relevant. Christmas Eve services, we often had a couple of hundred people, lots of children. Reading straight from a gospel didn't necessarily get the message across as we needed it to, but we have some magnificent children's retelling of the gospel of the Christmas story. So I'd often sit down with a book, a storybook, and we would read the Nativity. And we'd often have the crib sitting to one side, so whoever was there could say, oh, you're talking about that. So it was really about being very conscious of who I was engaging with without dumbing down the story, but also not necessarily using lots of big long words that they didn't understand.
And so how can the church community then, or how can they come together at this time to truly celebrate the season?
Well, from a theological perspective, personally, again, I really encourage people to engage with the whole season. Don't rush into singing the Christmas carols. We've already got Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer in the shops. Don't rush into singing the Christmas carols. Actually look at the Advent stories, the characters in the Advent stories, their journeys, their investment in the story, their part in God's part of salvation history. So from a traditional church congregation, do the whole thing. Don't just rush in at the last minute.
The thing off the cuff here, Reed, do you think perhaps that we go to Christmas, I don't want to say too quickly, but we've got this lead up time to a crescendo, and we sort of go like that rather than take the story with us.
I think we've got into that habit, and the commercialism of Christmas doesn't help. I walked into a mall, it was still October, and they were playing Christmas music. I'm not saying Christmas carols. The Christmas decorations were already on the shelves. It was October.
Well, they were out here in September.
Well, I was pretty horrified to also see alongside the Christmas decorations, the hot cross buns. You know, a couple of years ago, at least they waited till Boxing Day. So, you know, with all those mixed messages, all that, what I would call chaos, it's very, very hard for us to be able to step back and say, no, actually there's a progression here, it's a season, each week grows, there's a deeper meaning to what we're doing. and save the Christmas carols for the season of Christmas.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't just finish on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
So you're right.
After that, yeah.
We rush into it too quickly.
So how do you feel, and I don't know if it's a societal thing or a church thing, but what's the best way of dealing with these challenges then? I mean, you can't just stop the hot cross buns going out, you know.
No, you can't. I think there are multiple layers to that. One of them is, please don't buy your hot cross buns yet.
Yeah.
Our family has a tradition that on the 1st of December the tree goes up.
Yep.
It's not going to happen this year for various reasons, but that is our tradition. It starts at Advent.
Yeah.
It doesn't start in the lead up.
Yep.
And we keep the Christmas decorations up till the 12th night.
Yep.
From a church perspective, what can you do to raise your profile in the community around high days and holy days? And of course, Christmas is one. Messy church, messy Christmas.
That's a loaded question too, though. I feel because, you know, it's how can one raise their profile without being either too preachy or, you know, I don't know what's the other word is. I'm not going to listen to you, you know, regardless. So, you know, it's a balancing act. That's what I'm going to say.
Yes, I think it is. But we live in a world, a Western world anyway, where marketing's key.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying go down the corporate track. But again, how can you express the signs and symbols of Christmas that connect back to the Jesus story in a way that somebody walking past the church or the cathedral or your notice board might say,
maybe it's
I hadn't thought about it for a while. Maybe I could go and explore this.
Maybe demonstrating the symbols, like there's peace. You say there's love and hope and
joy.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think we did it really well through COVID. Of course, we all got locked in just before Easter, and there were some wonderful ideas of how could you express the fact that even though we were all locked down, this was still a significant journey. And things like putting palm leaves on your front door or Easter gardens, flowers or whatever. Just like Anzac Day here. Put your poppies out on your front fence. There are ways we can do something similar for Christmas.
I think it's actually demonstrating it rather than just talking about it.
Oh, you've got to live it. You can't just talk about it. You've got to be in the season. And that's why it's so important that we engage with the season. Again, some of those missional activities. How might we support families or people who have been in hardship? How might we support other community
how can we bring joy to the other?
How can we,
Or how can we give hope to the other? You know?
Advent calendars.
What do you think of them?
Well, I'm actually a firm believer in Advent calendars, but not in the chocolates.
Okay.
Just another commercial gimmick. And it's getting harder and harder to find an Advent calendar that tells the Jesus story. And also one that tells it in a contemporary way. Because so many of them disconnect from people's culture and concepts today. But there are other ways of doing Advent calendars. Print off, Google's really helpful here. Print off something that you've found on the net that encourages you to do a good deed every day, to do something active. We always have an Advent wreath for the family, and it sits in the middle of the dining table. And at night, when we give thanks for our meal, the appropriate candles lit. In Northern Europe, you can actually buy Advent, like tall Advent candles, which have a mark for every day, and you light them for those few minutes as the candle burns down, and it marks the way to the 25th of December. Even, dare I say it, crossing the barriers. And I bought several years ago an Advent calendar that was actually Santa boots. Don't tell anybody.
I was going out.
But inside each Santa boot was one of those kindnesses or activities that would make something different both for you in the Advent journey and for someone else.
Look, there was I can't remember where I heard this, but even when you're walking down the street, your own street even, and there's someone else out there, it's easy to just walk past them and say nothing, and they might be on their phone, that's okay, they can be on their phone, but even just saying hello, have a good day sort of thing,
even smiling. Yeah.
You know, 'cause,
Living the reality that Christmas is more than lots and lots of shopping bags.
yeah,
That Christmas is celebrating a gift, and Advent is our opportunity to prepare for that and to really every year get a little bit different understanding of what it was that God did in the world.
But it's also about maybe slowing down a little bit too.
It is desperately needed, but how many people actually do it? I'm aware that for clergy this is an incredibly packed time of year. I mean, this week Anglican Focus has put out tips on for clergy, 10 tips to help them avoid burnout at this time of year. Because it's absolutely frantic. And how do you maintain your own journey and your own connectedness in that? And that can be incredibly challenging, but it is a time to sit down and to try and catch your breath. Maybe do some sort of reflection. It may be from a pre-written Advent book, a daily reflections for Advent.
Well, how do you slow down then?
Well, last year was very, very different to this year because as a bishop, I wasn't carrying a congregation through the journey. So I was able to do this. My office had a nativity in it. I had an Advent wreath. I had a book of reflections. Don't ask me which one it was. No. It's in a box still at the moment. But I just took a pause every day. We had our Advent wreath at home. Not so much the Christmas tree because we were going to be travelling pretty quickly after Christmas Day. But it was easier for me as a bishop than I appreciate it is for a parish priest. I pray for our parish priests.
Is it a case of, I'm not saying they should or shouldn't, and probably going off topic here, but should something like being able to just turn off their phones for half an hour, so they can do that reflection?
Yes, and that's a personal discipline. And for some people it's easy, and for some people it's not.
Well, when you talk about, if you're talking about slowing down in today's age where there is that commercialisation and parishioners wanting things and you've got to get things done, perhaps the easiest way is to, for some time, knowing what you have to do, be able to just turn that thing off.
And disengage.
And even if in that time you write a list of what you have to do, at least you are doing something without being bombarded from 20 directions.
And that bombardment is very, very real. And especially if you have a busy parish, lots of groups who all want you to go to their Christmas function. It's a personal discipline that I must admit many clergy are not good at, but we need to get more savvy.
And maybe the parishioners need to be aware of that, or not?
Well, awareness is always a good thing. Education is always a good thing. But again, when we're being bombarded by all the sights, sounds and symbols of secular Christmas, the pressures of family, sometimes we just overlook that our clergy need a break. They need some space.
So anyway, so I'm going to get onto a bit of a more happier thing. Any interesting or memorable stories from your time as a parish priest or as a bishop?
Oh, well, I've told you one.
Another one, please.
Yes, and I was actually reminded of it this week.
Okay.
In my very first parish. And it was probably my first Advent, my first solo Advent, as against in my curacy where Advent was directed.
So you were presiding the service.
Absolutely, and it was Advent 1. The church was decked in Advent purple. The Advent wreath was had its first candle lit, and we had a family with a number of children, all ages, everything from sort of 12 down to a babe in arms. And one of the little girls, she would have been about 4 or 5. She was old enough to understand birthdays. And she came running into the church, bounced up and down in the aisle, absolutely delighted and giggling and saying, "I love it when the church is dressed in purple because it's nearly my birthday." She was a December baby.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
And every Advent, I always remember that little girl.
Yeah.
It's almost my birthday, which of course gave me an absolute perfect opening to say, and who else's birthday are we getting ready for?
Yeah.
So I will always remember her.
Wow. So, what sort of, with all the struggles or that people, and we've also got people now going into formation as well, or sorry, people from formation going into their first
placements,
job,
being ordained,
placement,
transition times.
And, so they're going to, may or may not have that sort of experience, or they may have the struggles, with, trying to get things ready or not, I don't know. So, what sort of message do you have for those people, perhaps?
Well, I think first of all, we have a number of people being ordained as deacon and priests in the next 10 days.
Yeah.
And they have the Advent blessing of being able to go on retreat, which means they can take a deep breath before they make this very significant step. And I would hope that we will be able to incorporate a little of those Advent reflections during that week. But then again, they also have the anxiety of knowing that they've left family behind, they've all been in parish placements, they've left the parish priest behind, and there's all this busyness going on.
But there's a chance to slow down?
There is a chance to slow down. I was talking to one of our formation students the other day, and he was saying, I finished all my exams. This is great. I've got one less thing on my plate. Yes, I still have to work and I've still got my parish placement, but it was like a grace space for them to be able to focus more on the journey. I hope that those who have been in discernment and formation this year, who are on the point of a transition, are able to use this time to take a deep breath, to slow down, to reflect a little on the journey, recenter themselves in God's story, because when we're really, really overloaded, sometimes God is very present. Jesus is our focus, but it's almost like Jesus is sitting on our shoulder rather than standing beside us and holding our hand. So that this might offer an opportunity for them to reconnect and then start that journey again as we move through the season of Christmas into Epiphany. We've got a little bit of a break this year before Lent begins, because when they step into the new year, they're stepping back into another really busy time. So my hope and prayer is that this gives them a sense of hope for the future, a sense of understanding of how much they are valued and loved, not only by those who walk beside them, but that they are part of God's wonderful creation of love. I know this is also a hard time for many people, that they have the support that they need, and they know we're there for them.
When you mentioned about Jesus on the shoulder, I was actually thinking of, because one of the things which I'm conscious of is that the performance of the sanctuary versus the action of worship, shall we say. And I'm thinking of, God with a hammer versus God with or Jesus with his hand on your shoulder saying it's going to be okay. So I guess what I'm trying to lean towards is that no matter what happens, on that first service, it's going to be okay.
Absolutely. And I think our readings this year, particularly for Advent, I mean, we walk into another one of those apocalyptic readings for Advent 1, and it's like, oh my goodness, I'm not quite sure about this, but it is what it is. But to actually understand again that even in the midst of what can be quite disturbing readings, end time readings, what Jesus is trying to tell us is that it is okay. Do not be afraid. How many times do we hear do not be afraid through the season of Advent? I mean, there's a lot happening in the wider world at the moment that has us really disturbed. And I'm not saying we need to be complacent about that, we don't. But we also have a God that's saying, I broke into humanity. So that you could see that I meant what I said, that I was here for you. And Jesus showed us a different way. We hear, do not be afraid. We have a promise of a new order. even when it gets chaotic, even when we are disturbed, even when we are grieving, when we are hurting, when we see others hurting. God is bigger than all of that. And when we are frightened and we are anxious, we can go back and say, I haven't got the words myself, but can you just hold me, please, Jesus? Can you please just hold me? Can you please show me how I might be able to partner with you to make a difference?
I think that's a perfect ending to this. What about you? Look, thank you very much for this chat. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Tim.